A reading from the Holy Bible, the New American Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 12, one center of worship. These are the statutes and ordinances which you must be careful to observe in the land which the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you to possess throughout the time you live on its soil. Destroy entirely all the places where the nations you are to dispossess serve their gods on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every green tree. Tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, burn up their Asherahs, and chop down the idols of their gods, that you may destroy the very name of them from that place. That is not how you are to act toward the Lord your God. Instead, you shall seek out the place which the Lord your God chooses out of all your tribes and designates as his dwelling, to put his name there. There you shall go, bringing your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and personal contributions, your votive and voluntary offerings, and the firstlings of your herds and flocks. There too, in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your family shall eat and rejoice in all your undertakings, in which the Lord your God has blessed you. You shall not do as we are doing here today, everyone doing what is right in their own sight, since you have not yet reached your resting place, the heritage which the Lord your God is giving you. But after you have crossed the Jordan and dwell in the land which the Lord your God is giving you as a heritage, when he has given you rest from all your enemies round about, and you live there in security, then to the place which the Lord your God chooses as the dwelling place for the name, you shall bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and personal contributions, and every special offering you have vowed to the Lord. You shall rejoice in the presence of the Lord your God with your sons and daughters, your male and female slaves, as well as with the Levite within your gates, who has no hereditary portion with you. Be careful not to sacrifice your burnt offerings in any place you like, but offer them in the place which the Lord chooses in one of your tribal territories. There you shall do what I command you. Profane and sacred slaughter. However, in any of your communities, you may slaughter and eat meat freely, according to the blessing that the Lord your God has given you. The unclean, as well as the clean, may eat it, as they do the gazelle or the deer. Only you shall not eat of the blood, but must pour it out on the ground like water. Moreover, you may not in your own communities partake of your tithe of the grain or wine or oil, of the firstborn of your herd or flock, or any offering you have vowed, of your voluntary offerings, or of your personal contributions. These you must eat in the presence of the Lord your God, in the place that the Lord your God chooses, along with your sons and daughters, your male and female slave, and the Levite within your gates, and there, in the presence of the Lord, you shall rejoice in all your undertakings. Be careful also that you do not neglect the Levite as long as you live in your land. After the Lord your God has enlarged your territory, as he promised you, and you eat meat, you may eat it freely. And if the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far, you may slaughter in the manner I have commanded you any of your herd or flock that the Lord has given you, and eat it freely in your own community. You may eat it as you would the gazelle or the deer, the unclean and the clean, eating it together. But make sure that you do not eat of the blood, for blood is life. You shall not eat that life with the flesh. Do not eat of the blood, therefore, but pour it out on the ground like water. Do not eat of it, that you and your children after you may prosper for doing what is right in the sight of the Lord. However, any sacred gifts or votive offerings that you may have, you shall bring with you to the place which the Lord chooses, and there you must sacrifice your burnt offerings, both the flesh and the blood, on the altar of the Lord your God. Of your other sacrifices, the Lord your God, of your other sacrifices, the blood indeed must be poured out against the altar of the Lord your God, but their flesh you may not eat. Be careful to heed all these words I command you today, that you and your descendants after you may forever prosper for doing what is good and right in the sight of the Lord your God. Warning against abominable practices. When the Lord your God cuts down from before you the nations you are going in to dispossess, and you have dispossessed them and are settled in their land, be careful that you not be trapped into following them after they have been destroyed before you. Do not inquire regarding their gods. How did these nations serve their gods, so I might do the same? You shall not worship the Lord your God that way, because they offered their gods every abomination that the Lord detests, even burning their sons and daughters to their gods. Chapter 12 notes, verse 15, the place. To put his name there, Moshe thus designates Jerusalem, Mount Zion, in accordance with the Deuteronomic doctrine that the Lord chooses Zion as the place where eventually the temple will be built, as he chooses the house of David to reign over Israel. See 2 Samuel 7:1. Kings 8, Psalm 132. But the Lord's reign over Israel, see 2 Samuel 7:1. Kings 8, Psalm 132. But the Lord's presence in Jerusalem consists in putting his name there. And then it references 12:11, 21, 14, 23 through 24, 16:2, verse 6 and verse 11, chapter 26:2 and verse 1, Kings 8, verses 44, 49, chapter 9, verse 3 and 11, verse 36, 21, verse 14, or chapter 14, verse 23 through 24, and chapter 16, verse 2, verse 6, verse 11, chapter 26, verse 2. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 44, 49. Chapter 9, verse 3. Chapter 11, verse 36. Chapter 21, verse, that was chapter 12, verse 11, and chapter 21. Chapter 14, verse 23 through 24. Chapter 16, verse 2, and verse 6, and verse 11. Chapter 26, verse 2, and 1 Kings 8, 44. 49. Chapter 9, verse 3. Chapter 11, verse 36. 21. And then chapter 14, verses 23 through 24. Chapter 16, verse 2. Verse 6 and verse 11. Chapter 26, verse 2. And 1 Kings 8:44. And verse 49. And chapter 9, verse 3. Chapter 11, verse 36. And 21. Chapter 14, verse 23 through 24. Chapter 16, verse 2 and 6 and 11. And chapter 26, verse 2. 1 Kings 8, 44 and 49. Chapter 9, verse 3 and 11, verse 36. Chapter 14, verse 21. 2 Kings 17:34 and 21, verse 4 and 7 and 23:27. The Lord himself cannot be contained in an earthly dwelling. 1 Kings 8:27. But because he says of Jerusalem temple that My name will be there. 1 Kings 8:16 and 29. 2 Kings 23 and 27. He is present. This theology allows God in a way to dwell with Israel and at the same time perseveres. Divine, a way to dwell with Israel. Wait a minute. Way to dwell with Israel and at the same time perseveres divine transcendence. See note 1 Kings 8:12 through 13. Well, that concludes the reading of chapter 11 from Deuteronomy.